it comes to NFL content here on YouTube, draft grades are far from a new concept. There's plenty of people out there who will talk about their favorite drafts or their least favorite drafts. People that have a channel dedicated to a specific team will focus on that team's draft. There's guys out there, like I did last year, who will talk about the draft in its entirety, but break it down into 8 videos going division by division. There's other people who will just make one video talking about the draft at large and be done with it. All of those are very valid and, quite frankly, correct ways of going about this whole draft content thing. However, because I wanted to be different, back in the month of May, I decided that I was going to do one video for every single NFL team. 32 videos throughout the months of May and June, talking about the draft and grading every single pick. Here we are at the end of August, and I still have 2 whole divisions left to do. So that didn't work out, and I found out very quickly why I had seen no one else do this. Now, that being said, I made a commitment. I owe it to both myself and to you, the viewer, to complete this, to go through with these last 8 teams, these last 2 divisions, and hand out my grades for the 2024 NFL Draft. Now, that being said, because we are in late August, preseason has ended, cut day is either rapidly approaching or in the past by the time you're watching these videos, and we've seen camp and, the development that these rookies are already undergoing. Just know that that's not really factoring into these grades. Now, there have been a couple exceptions here and there. I make sure to disclose when those are, but for the most part, these grades were grades that I wrote down in, early May and have stuck to. Now, that being said, if there's a grade that is already showing signs of aging poorly, then I will tell you, hey, this is how I felt about this player before the draft. However, it looks like he's already starting to prove me wrong. I will happily admit that, and we can all laugh at me taking forever and being a big, dumb, stupid idiot. Also with that, please try to keep in mind that I'm not trying to say that I am better or know better than any of the GMs that get mentioned in these videos. I'm just a 21-year-old college kid who spent what little free time he had during the spring, taking a look at film and scouting prospects and doing what I could to the best of my ability. And I like sharing my opinions on this kind of stuff. You guys seem to like it when I share my opinion on this kind of stuff, so I'm going to continue to do it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. Traditionally speaking, when it comes to recording these draft grade videos, I try to start out by talking about the team at large, right? Whether I'm really high on the team, really low on the team, indifferent, confused, whatever it may be, I've had a lot of different opinions about a lot of different teams, and then I try to tie that opinion into their draft class in some way. However, with the Chiefs, I don't have to do that. We know what this team is, right? We know Mahomes, we know Chris Jones, we know Travis Kelce, we know Creed Humphrey and Trent McDuffie and Andy Reid and Brett Veach and Taylor Swift. We know this football team. So I don't have to do all that. We're just going to go ahead and dive right into the grades here, starting out with wide receiver Xavier Worthy out of Texas. The, in my opinion, perfect pick for the Chiefs here in the first round. This is a team that has not had that true deep threat. And I know they just added Hollywood Brown. I think both of these guys are a little bit more than just, hey, you're fast, run a streak and we'll find you, right? I think there's a little bit more to their games, but more so with Worthy. Because if you think about it, Hollywood Brown's only on a 1-year deal and isn't playing in the first week. So tonight, ironically, when I'm recording this and when this will get uploaded, is kind of the first look we'll get of Worthy as this true deep threat for the Chiefs receiver room, in regular season action. I know there was a big play between Mahomes and Worthy in the preseason, but we know what the preseason is. I'm talking about real ball against arguably the best defense in the league in Baltimore. And I think they're going to have at least one. They're going to have at least one huge play where, whoever's calling the game, I don't know if Chris Collinsworth is calling the game, but if he is, you're going to hear, that's that old Mahomes to Tyreek Hill connection. But, that's what Worthy is. He's this true deep threat that the Chiefs haven't really had since Tyreek Hill. Like, yeah, you had Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and he was fine, but he was inconsistent. He wasn't fantastic. I think Worthy is a lot better than that. So you trade up to get a guy that not only is he a perfect fit, but your quarterback wanted him, which is something I respect. If your superstar quarterback is like, hey, I'd really like to throw the ball to this guy next year. I respect the team going out of their way to get him if he's talented, which Worthy is. Sometimes you get this situation, other times you get, as a Bears fan, I can remember Ryan Poles taking Velus Jones partially because Justin Fields really wanted him. And we know how that ended up. At least I think so. I don't know how much Chiefs fans think about the Bears. Probably not very often, but that's neither here nor there. Taking a look at what Xavier Worthy brings to the table. Obviously, he's got the speed, broke the Combine's 40-yard dash record with a blazing 4.21. He's an instant accelerator who goes from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. He's a twitched-up, high-energy athlete who explodes out of his stance. He has really consistent, reliable hands, only a 6% drop rate. Even with a broken hand in 2022, his drop rate was pretty low. He can stop and start on a dime, which pairs with flexibility for flashes of brilliance and immense upside as a downfield separator. Like I said, that's the big thing here with Worthy. Solid release technique with quick feet and room to grow. He knows how to weaponize speed and bait defensive backs upfield as a route runner. His route tree is surprisingly vast, not nearly as one-dimensional as you'd expect from a guy like him. He's a great deep ball tracker, even in crowded situations. If there's 2-3 guys around him, he's still going to be able to find a way to get to the ball or get underneath the ball. He does a great job of contorting his body downfield. He has really good sideline awareness, can extend beyond his frame to haul in throws on the sideline. His really good contact balance despite his stature. He gets after it as a blocker despite his lack of size, being, what did he measure in at here at the Combine? 5'11", 168 pounds. Not the biggest guy in the world, obviously. And he's only 21 years old. He was an immediate impact his freshman year at Texas. He's still young, still has a lot of room to grow. And I would say he's already pretty damn polished. Now, that being said, given his frame, you're not expecting him to be a ball winner. You don't expect him to go up for 50-50 ball. He doesn't have a lot of contested catch production, only 33% contested catch rate, hauled in 5 of 20 contested catch opportunities last year. Not a huge deal. Like I said, just not the player he is. Additionally, because of that smaller stature, his catch radius isn't super big because his arms are a little bit shorter than some of the bigger receivers out there. And also, just finishing up with his size, his hands are a little smaller than you'd want, and because he's smaller, he's not the strongest or bulkiest receiver in the world. So there's going to be times where he's going to have the ball in his hands and someone's going to bat it out of his hands a little bit more than average. Not a huge deal, but definitely something that was notable at Texas. Also, didn't get a lot of true reps against press because of the way they played him, and he's not a good blocker. But when it comes to the size and the stuff with press, given what the Chiefs are able to do and given who their offensive coordinator is, I don't think you're going to see Worthy in a lot of situations where he's pressed at the line of scrimmage. Because hypothetically, if you press him enough, you're going to minimize, if not erase him from a game. But I don't think Andy Reid's going to let that happen. I think we're going to see him lined up in ways that gets him a lot of off coverage, a little bit of cushion, whether they line him up out of the slot or, line him up in ways that he's a little bit further behind the line of scrimmage. Or, I've seen some people say they could line him up at halfback and run like a wheel or a streak with him out of the backfield. That's possible if you want to get really funky. So I'm not super worried about that in Kansas City. On another team, maybe, but we've seen smaller receivers thrive. Last year, we saw Tank Dell look incredible for the Texans. He was a super, super small receiver. I think there's ways to kind of avoid that, and I'm sure Kansas City wouldn't be taking him in the first round if they thought he was a receiver they can't get out of those press situations. So I think this is a perfect pick for them. Great player, someone who's super underrated outside of his speed, I feel like. He got, at least pre-draft, labeled as pretty much a one-dimensional player with that speed, because you see a guy run a 4.2, you're like, oh, it's John Ross, and that's not Worthy. He's a lot more nuanced, a lot more polished than that, so I love this pick for the Chiefs. And then in the second round, they end up taking Kingsley Suamataia, the offensive tackle out of BYU. Great developmental player. He is starting at left tackle, if I'm not mistaken. The first game, he is over Wanya Morris. That's really interesting to me, because I won't lie, I haven't been following Chiefs camp to a T, so you'll have to let me know in the comments if he's been killing it in camp. But that's what that would lead me to believe, and that's the information I'm going to operate under. Because again, this is a coaching staff that knows what they're doing. They're not going to throw this guy out there if he is as green and as raw as he was in college. Whatever their development program is must be incredible, which isn't surprising. Making who was it? It's Trey Smith, who was a 5th rounder, turning him into one of the better guards in the sport. They clearly know what they're doing with young offensive linemen. So honestly, with the Chiefs, I don't think it's crazy to assume that Sua Matea could have underwent some like crazy metamorphosis over the offseason. But taking a look at what he does well, he has the size, he has the length, he has really good athletic traits, quick off the line of scrimmage, very fluid mover who consistently gets to the 2nd and 3rd levels with a really solid targeting system, very rarely misses his mark. His play strength, especially in his arms and hands, is insane when his technique comes together. That was something that was very up and down in college. But again, I'm operating under the assumption that the Chiefs have probably worked that with him, which wouldn't have impacted my grade because I still think this is an A either way based off the value and the upside. But that's just me explaining, now that we have the depth chart for tonight and the roster and all that, we know that he's starting. I think that's really interesting, at least according to their website. Maybe their website's completely off and I'm looking too far into this, but regardless, he's got the good play strength. He's a really tenacious run blocker, still only 21 years old. But on the other side, he's raw. You got to teach him a lot, or you needed to teach him a lot coming out of BYU. He plays upright, hand placement's wide, footwork sloppy, not great at reacting to inside moves. He's someone that often lunges and will fall off blocks. But I can tell you right now, this is probably the player that I am the second most excited to watch tonight for the Chiefs, and we'll talk about the other guy here in a little bit, just because I'm really interested to see why he's starting week 1. Like I said, I haven't followed their training camp super closely, so I don't have a frame of reference. I'm assuming that if he's starting, that means that development has gone a little bit quicker than some of us may have imagined, which if that's the case, Sua Matea has got the upside of a franchise left tackle, which would be incredible for the Chiefs to land. That's been like the one position on the offensive line over the past couple years that has kind of been an issue. You've got the interior figured out. The right side of the line right now is Jawan Taylor, which was an awesome pickup. So if you can get Sua Matea figured out quickly, then holy cow, that's huge for Kansas City. And then in the 4th round, they made 2 picks, the first of which was Jared Wiley, the tight end out of TCU. And this is someone who I will say grade-wise wasn't one of my favorite tight ends. He was my tight end 9, had a mid-4th round grade on him, so right around where he ends up getting taken. I think it was good value. But to go to the Chiefs makes a lot of sense. 6'6", 250 pounds. He has a really good frame, good length, huge catch radius. He's explosive as a linear athlete with really good straight line speed. He's good after the catch. He has versatility. He's lined up as an inline tight end, a wing tight end in the slot, as a boundary receiver. He does a little bit of everything. He's just another chess piece for this Chiefs offense. He understands how to attack leverage and create separation very well. He's very deceptive at the top of his routes. He doesn't have major tells as a route runner, which is going to keep defenders guessing and keep them on their toes. He's a very strong hands catcher. He's consistently somebody that is able to pluck the ball out of the air away from his frame. And he tries against the run. Not super great. The technique isn't necessarily there, but he does try. The leverage and him playing high is really what sets him behind as a run blocker. Taking a look at some of the negative here. On top of that, he needs to keep his feet churning once engaged. He's also somebody that wasn't super consistent in college, not super physical after the catch, and he drifts a little much against zone. But hey, Kansas City, this isn't a team that necessarily needed a big body blocking tight end or anything like that. They just need somebody who's a backup to Kelsey. Right? And that's kind of what Wiley is. He's another athletic chess piece. I think he'll get on the field a little bit if you decide to run 12 personnel. Obviously, you have Noah Gray, who just got paid as of the time I'm recording this, but he's still got something there for you. He's a good tight end 3, a good backup. Maybe they think they can develop him, and, if Kelsey isn't going to be around for the next 3-4 years, I don't know what his career timeline looks like in his head, then maybe they think Wiley can step up and play a similar role. That might be getting a little overzealous. That might be looking a little too far ahead. But I do think it's a good pick. I think this is one of the teams that I would have liked to see him go to. If he would have went to another team, I'd have some more questions, but given that we know what the Chiefs look for in tight ends, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think this is the perfect spot for him. Again, not an A+, because I do have some reservations with Wiley, and I also think there were better tight ends on the board, but it is an A, because it makes sense for Kansas City. I get it. Definitely can't hate that pick. And then 2 picks later, they take Jaden Hicks, the safety out of Washington State. Not going to start tonight, unfortunately. And man, I love Jaden Hicks. This pick is perfect. First of all, they didn't make the cardinal mistake that a lot of teams made, in my opinion, when drafting these box safeties, these versatile safeties. And that's taking them over Malik Mustafa. He actually went before Hicks. I've dinged a lot of teams for taking this type of player this year because I thought Malik Mustafa was head and shoulders above the rest of them. And a lot of teams skipped over him. I've dinged a lot of those teams, but thankfully Hicks is not one of those guys. He was my safety 4. Had an early 3rd round grade on him. You get him here in the 4th. Great value. Taking a look at Hicks as a player, 6'3", 212 pounds, long frame, has the ability to close passing windows and matchups against taller pass catchers. He has outstanding range working downhill and towards the sideline, both in the run game and when closing in on routes. He has incredible moments in the run game, possesses a great mix of physicality, range, and straight-up tenacity. He has the experience playing up top in the slot and at the second level, kind of being a pseudo linebacker, a box safety. He has explosive power on contact, somebody that's consistently going to disrupt at the catch point. He has a nose for the football. He's someone that is always in the right place at the right time, just knows how to be where he needs to be. He's a good athlete, smooth hips, pretty explosive, and he's a tone setter. Point blank period, he is a tone setter. He's somebody that is going to lay somebody out, get the defense rallying, and that's how you shift momentum. I love this for the Chiefs. Now, that being said, not the greatest deep safety, but you're not expecting him to do that. If you're drafting Jaden Hicks to be a deep safety, you're drafting the wrong player. Point blank period. I think that's a pretty safe bet there. Can get fooled against play action a little bit, but I trust the Chiefs coaching staff to work with him and work that out of him. And he's got some missed tackles that you'd like to see cleaned up. He's somebody that's a little over aggressive. Sometimes he'll over pursue. Sometimes he'll go for the strip rather than wrapping up and let a guy break off of him. That's another thing where I think that can be coached out of him. You look at this Chiefs defense, there's so many guys that maybe aren't listed as starters that make huge impacts. Like last year during the Super Bowl, I've made, in my opinion, my favorite video that I have made, where I talked about some of the more underrated players on the Chiefs defense who aren't the superstars but still made big plays. I talked about Leo Chanel coming in and, now he is a starter. Talked about guys like Tershawn Wharton, Mike Pinnell, Mike Dana, Felix Anudike-Uzomah managed to make it in there at one point. A guy like Shamari Connor. There was someone else who I can't remember, but those type of guys who, some of them are listed as starters now, but at the time weren't the big names, weren't the guys that you're expecting to make plays, but they still made big plays. They still managed to have an impact on the game. I think that's kind of what Jaden Hicks is going to be right away, where, yeah, he's not going to start over Reed or Cook, but there's going to be times where you bring him up into the box, against the run, and he's going to light up a running back, or he's going to kill a receiver running a drag. And all of a sudden, you get the whole defense rallying, everything starts going your way. He's just a great player to have. Very versatile, very aggressive, very tenacious. I would argue that's something that maybe the Chiefs safeties right now don't have, which isn't the worst thing in the world. They are more worried about their safeties covering and being consistent tacklers than they are about somebody that's just unhinged, for lack of a better word. So getting Jaden Hicks as that third guy, as somebody that is going to make the lives of, opposing offenses hell when he subs in and is probably going to be a killer on special teams, is awesome. Love the pick. I think he's somebody that, sooner rather than later could end up starting or could end up just being in a role that is considered a starting role, even if he's not listed as one on the depth chart. Just a really, really good player. And then in the 5th round, they end up, in my opinion, stealing Hunter Nourzad, the center out of Penn State. at a mid to a late third round grade on him. You get him here in the fifth. That is fantastic value. 6'3", 317 pounds, good quickness off the snap, good balance, good pad level. He's played center, he's played guard, he's even played tackle. He has really strong active hands. Rarely is he letting someone hit him before he hits them. He has nice quick sets and a really good anchor against power rushers or stronger rushers. He has a good snatch to take down pass rushers. He has the mobility to get out on screens. He's played in both zone and power schemes. His feet are constantly moving. He's really good at moving defenders. He's a straight up people mover. And he has the quickness to reach block and even pull on the outside. That being said, on the flip side, not the greatest lateral blocker, both in terms of agility and his actual aim and accuracy, for lack of a better word. He's not great when it comes to finding loopers on twists and stunts. He will let quick rushers kind of get across his face from time to time. He's just a little inconsistent against faster pass rushers. And when he gets up to the second level, his timing and his ability to locate work isn't fantastic. So he's somebody that is a little bit developmental, but obviously you have Creed Humphrey as your starting center. You don't have to worry about that. And like I said, he's got the positional versatility. Joe Thuney isn't getting any younger. Jawan Taylor isn't the youngest guy in the world. If something happens here in 2-3 years where they're not there, I think Nourzad, if the cards are played right, which again with the Chiefs, I assume they will be, he can end up being a starter sooner rather than, or I'm not going to say sooner rather than later. At some point, he can end up being a starter, which is a fantastic find in the 5th round. Again, the other 5th round interior lineman that I can think of that they've taken as of late is Trey Smith. He's a consistent starter, one of the 15 best guards in the sport pretty easily. So I love that for them. In the 6th round, they also took Kamal Hayden, the defensive back out of Tennessee. He ended up getting cut, didn't make the practice squad. He's in Green Bay now, I think. I didn't watch him pre-draft, so I don't have any real thoughts there. And then CJ Hansen, their final pick in the 7th round, the offensive lineman out of Holy Cross. He's their backup right guard. The only player from Holy Cross I watched was the receiver whose name is escaping me. It was Jalen Coker. Jalen Coker was the only Holy Cross player I ended up watching. Now, sure, I'm sure I saw Hansen in passing watching Coker, but I don't have any real thoughts on him. And like I said, I trust the Chiefs with my life to develop interior linemen. Now, I'm not going to give them a grade because I don't feel right grading somebody I've never watched play, but I can't say anything negative, so that's a good thing. And then one last thing I want to do, I want to bring up a UDFA. If you're a Chiefs fan, you probably know who I'm talking about. If you know me, you probably know who I'm talking about. Carson Steele, the fullback out of UCLA by way of Ball State. God, I love this guy. I love fullbacks. They're my favorite position. I talk about fullbacks on here a lot. And considering he was the only notable one in this year's draft, even though he went undrafted, I would be remiss if I didn't bring him up. Just somebody that is converted running back, so he's a great runner. Hard to bring down one-on-one. He's a weight room demon. Great contact balance. Able to push the pile. Really good lateral agility. Incredibly durable. Has soft hands as a pass catcher and is surprisingly a good route runner. Has good quickness. Now, on the flip side of things, didn't have any special teams experience in college. Not a great pass blocker in terms of his diversity. He was mainly just somebody who would go low, which is totally fine in college. In the NFL, you need to work on that a little bit, and he didn't have any true fullback reps in college. But that being said, he's done a great job working with the Chiefs this offseason. Obviously, as a Bears fan, I watched him play against the Bears and run all over us. He's somebody that, he's a fullback, but still excites me because nowadays, fullbacks aren't really runners, right? They're blockers. That is what the fullback position has become. And quite frankly, I love that about them. They're a very unselfish team-first position. That's part of the reason why I get so excited about them. But most of those guys have a tight end background, or in some cases, in multiple cases now with Scott Matlock moving, defensive line backgrounds. There's not a whole lot of guys who are former tailbacks. There's Kari Blasingame and CJ Ham I can think of off the top of my head. But out of those two, Ham's the only one that really gets to run the ball. And he doesn't get to do it all that much. Whereas with the Chiefs, I think we're going to see Carson Steele get the ball quite a bit. He's a fullback that, he's a fullback on the depth chart. I think we're going to see him as more of a Mike Allstott fullback than, a more recent Kyle Juszczyk versatile guy or a Pat Ricard pure blocker guy, which is awesome. There's a lack of that in the NFL, and shout out to the Chiefs for being the team to bring that back. Leave it to Andy Reid to say, yeah, we're the best passing team in football. We got the best quarterback in the league. But fuck it. Let's bring back the early 2000s fullback. Let's bring back the Mike Allstott to the world because we can. Because we can. We got this blonde kid with long hair, owns an alligator. Fuck it. Plus, how cool of a name is Carson Steele? I couldn't come up with a cooler fullback name if I tried. I love it. He doesn't go into the final grade because I haven't included UDFAs for anyone else. But just know that is an A++++++ to the 10th power, right? Easily my favorite UDFA pickup of the draft process. But as a whole, overall, love what this team did. Love what the Chiefs did. Giving them an A+. This is great to see after last year having a draft that didn't exactly wow a lot of people. Worthy and Suamatea and Hicks and Steele, they're going to be day one contributors. Wiley and Nourzad, more of developmental players, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen with them. I think Wiley will get some reps this year. It's just a really good class. CJ Hansen, hopefully he's a good backup for you. This team's going to three-peat. I want to be different. No offense to Chiefs fans, but I want to be different because you hate to see the same team winning every single year. But this team's going to fucking three-peat. We all know it.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that